I think a store of value that is awesome could be built on top of Solana and could surpass Bitcoin.
The most important market in the 21st century is the one for a non-sovereign sort of hard money.
15 years ago, Bitcoin proved that money doesn't need a government, doesn't need a bank, doesn't need permission. It just needs people who believe in it enough to keep the network alive. An engineer at Uber saw something hiding underneath that revolution. 4 years of moving tens of billions of dollars across banking rails, he understood money better than most people in crypto ever will. And he saw a leak. Miners spend dollars on electricity, earn crypto to sell the crypto to pay the bill. Capital leaking out every single day since '09, and nobody fixed it. He tried to bring Bitcoin to Solana. He couldn't do it without reintroducing the trust problem that Bitcoin was built to destroy. A teammate joked about rewriting a smart contract instead. 7 months later, unemployed, he built it, submitted it to the hackathon expecting nothing. It broke the entire Solana network on day one. Then he shut it down, not because it failed, because it worked too well for the wrong people. He rebuilt it, it got exploited, he rebuilt it again. The third time he solved the leak, turned down every VC who wanted tokens, instead froze the contract so nobody, not even him, can ever change the rules. The price skyrockets to $600, then crashes 93%. In that darkness, 450 people kept showing up every single day, mining tokens that the market left for dead. Through the crash, through the silence, they had all the reasons in the world to walk away, but they didn't, because they knew that this protocol is what they've been waiting for. This is the story of Or. Some people talk about building. HardhatChad, he just builds. iPhone apps in high school, a startup in college that fell apart because his team chose diplomas over the dream, trading options on the side because he couldn't sit still. Every time something ended, he started something else. That's not a career path, that's just a wiring. The kind of person who sees a problem and physically can't walk away from it. After college, he landed at Uber, not on the app side, but on the money side, the payments team. The group responsible for making sure every driver in every country on every continent gets paid. Tens of billions of dollars moving across borders, through the banks, through the credit card companies, through every legacy rail the financial system has ever built over the last century. He spent 4 years inside the machine. He knew exactly how money moves at scale, and he knew how broken the system truly was. When you work in payments at that level, something shifts in how you see the world. Money stops being this abstract concept that lives in your wallet. You see it for what it actually is: numbers in a database. Entries get reconciled between institutions that don't fully trust each other, through systems designed decades ago that still break in ways that would literally terrify people if they knew. Slow, expensive, fragile. He said it himself. You realize that money is just a thing that sits in a database. He knew about Bitcoin. He knew about Ethereum. Neither one of these things moved him. I mean, why would it? Ethereum took 30 minutes to settle a transaction and cost more in gas fees than any wire transfer. Bitcoin was slow by design. From a pure infrastructure standpoint, the tools he was already using at Uber were better than anything that crypto had to offer. He wasn't dismissive out of ignorance. He was dismissive because he's seen real money infrastructure and what it looked like, and crypto wasn't it. Then, February 2021, a friend named Barrett, who was building on Solana, sat him down. He wanted to show him something. Send $10,000 to anyone, anywhere across the border. Settles in 1 second, costs a fraction of a penny, runs 24/7, no bank holidays, no intermediaries, no 3-day settlement windows. He spent 4 years at Uber trying to fight a system to make money move faster. And here was this blockchain doing it on its own. Not almost good enough, not showing potential, actually competing with the best infrastructure traditional finance had ever built. He fell in love with the idea of Bitcoin, the vision of money that no government controls. No bank can freeze, no board of directors can inflate. But he could see that Bitcoin wasn't going to be the future of payments. It was too slow, too expensive, too rigid. So he fell in love with Solana. And he realized he was sitting in a rare position, a payments engineer who understood how money actually works at scale, on a blockchain fast enough to compete with what he's already built. The skills were there, the chain was there, and there was this feeling that he couldn't shake, that original promise to crypto, that anybody with a computer could participate, that this wasn't dead. It just hadn't been built right yet, and he couldn't stop thinking about it. Before ore was ever a thought, HardhatChad spent months trying to solve a different problem. How do I get Bitcoin onto Solana? This is a bridge problem, and it haunts every single chain that wants to use Bitcoin. You either give your Bitcoin to a custodian who issues you a wrapped version, or you lock it in a bridge that mints a synthetic copy on the other side. Either way, you just handed your money to a middleman. You've taken the hardest money ever created, the one thing designed to eliminate counterparty risk, and just made it dependent on trusting someone else. That's not Bitcoin anymore. That's just a receipt. And he knew it. He spent months trying to figure out ways around it. Lightning wasn't really scaling, layer 2s were dead ends, and wrapped Bitcoin sat on Solana earning zero yield because it doesn't compose naturally with DeFi, oil, and water. And the deeper he looked, the more he realized the problem wasn't just technical, it was philosophical. There's no way to bring Bitcoin to a fast chain without betraying the reason Bitcoin exists in the first place. So the question changed. What if you stopped trying to move Bitcoin and started building something native? Something born on Solana that carries the principle Bitcoin was founded on. Proof of work. Fair launch. Fixed supply, immutable rules, but living on an infrastructure that's actually fast enough for people to use. Here's what he saw that no one else was talking about. Bitcoin's proof of work does two jobs at once. It secures the network and distributes new tokens. On Solana, the network is already secured by the validators, which means if you build a proof of work token on Solana, you only need to solve for one problem. That's distribution. You're free to focus entirely on the fairest way to get tokens into people's hands. No one has ever separated these two functions before. Bitcoin could not do this. It needed proof of work for both. This design only needed it for one. But there's a deeper problem here. One that nobody in crypto has solved in 15 years. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Every proof of work token that's ever been created has the same flaw. Miners spend real dollars on electricity. Every time they earn crypto, they have to sell the crypto to pay the electricity bill. Every single day, the capital is leaving the ecosystem and it flows back to these power companies. It doesn't go back into the token. It doesn't strengthen the network. It leaves permanently. Bitcoin has this problem right now. Every mineable token in history had this same exact problem. And HardhatChad saw it because of the payments background. 4 years at Uber tracking how money flows, he knows how to follow the current. And in proof of work, the current was flowing out. The very mechanism designed to distribute the tokens was draining value, like a bathtub filling up with water while the drain was wide open. He sat with the problem for months, and then he saw the inversion. What if the miners didn't have to pay electricity companies? What if every dollar spent went directly to the token itself? The idea sat in his head for 7 months. He was unemployed, applying for jobs, not sure if anyone would even care, but he couldn't let it go. It's the kind of thought that wakes you up 3 a.m. in the morning and won't let you fall back to sleep. So he built it. It broke the entire Solana network on day one. He submitted it to the Colosseum hackathon from a small apartment in New York, applying for jobs the same week, expecting nothing because most of these things flop. This one didn't. 75% of transactions on Solana started failing. There was a feedback loop that no one could anticipate. People would ask why Solana was broken and hear about ore and start mining. It made it worse. What he designed to take up maybe 10% or 20% of block space consumed 30% of all compute units on chain. 30,000 followers in just 2 weeks. They didn't do any marketing. There was no influencer campaign. It was just a product that people couldn't stop using. But he couldn't celebrate because the mining wasn't working the way it was supposed to. Underneath the surface, there was something wrong. There were two kinds of miners. Regular people hitting a button, watching their transactions fail over and over, and a sophisticated player who figured out how to game the system and extract almost everything. The people ore was built for, couldn't earn, and the people it wasn't built for couldn't be stopped. He called it existential. The whole point is that anyone could mine on their laptop and phone. If only sophisticated actors could earn, or it was just another extraction game wearing a fair launch costume. He shut it down. 2 weeks in, at peak momentum, 30,000 people watching. Token was pumping at this time, but he killed it. Then came V2, new hash function called DrillX, designed to close the gap between CPUs and GPUs. Anyone could mine from any device. It worked for about 2 months, and then Gpool showed up. 200 engineers who figured out how to crack the DrillX restraint with using GPUs anyway. They mined and sold 90% of all newly minted ore. The price just bled for weeks and weeks. He paused the V2, realized that proof of work through hardware was never going to work the way he intended it to. At this point, this was the bottom, not just in price, but in spirit of the project. The price dropped to the mid-30s and below $10, and most people wrote it off and left the Discord, stopped talking about it almost completely. The market completely moved on from ore ever being a thing. But there was about 20 to 30 people who didn't move on. They were in the Discord every single day, throwing ideas at the wall, debating on mechanics, arguing about what could work and what wouldn't work. Trey Buckingham was one of them. He later became the head of operations, but at this point he was just a community member who refused to let this thing die. Then came the Gpool finale. They've been sitting on 2,000 to 3,000 ore the entire time, waiting. The exact day HardhatChad turned on the buyback system. Gpool sold everything, all of it. The price dropped from $9 to $6, the absolute bottom. The last big seller capitulated the exact moment the revenue engine came alive, from $6 ore to $600. Now, there was money behind ore. Foundation Capital, a 30-year Silicon Valley venture fund that was one of the earliest investors in Solana itself, led a $3 million seed run fund into Regolith Labs, the company behind ore. Colosseum had already invested $250,000 when ore won their first ever hackathon. Now they came back to add another additional $250,000 as a follow-on. Solana Ventures joined Mertman, Taj, Santiago, and a bunch of others. The deal structure went back and forth about 5 or 6 times. Every investor wanted token allocation. That's how crypto works. You invest, you get tokens, you wait for the price to go up, and then they sell. HardhatChad refused every time. Fair launch means fair launch. All equity in Regent Labs, no insider tokens, no VC waiting to dump when it happens. Every single ore token in existence was mined by someone who put up real soul, real computation to get it. The insiders didn't have tokens. The developer holds 0% of token supply. He told one interviewer, "I don't think there's anyone who's lost more money on this than me, but I'm having the time of my life." Matty Tay, one of Colosseum's co-founders, one of the earliest employees of Solana Labs, told us directly that ore holds a special place out of every investment they've made. They've been approached by other funds wanting to buy their position. They said no. Not because they couldn't sell, because they believe what's ahead is worth way more than anyone could offer today. A fund built on 9 to 11 year timelines looked at everything in crypto and said this is the one they're getting more convicted on over time, not less. December 9th, 2025, HardhatChad froze a mint program permanently. Max supply cut from 5 million to 3 million. A 40% reduction in total ore that will ever exist. Open source, verified on chain, nobody can modify it. Not the developer, not the foundation, not anyone. He's been saying this since his earliest interviews. A frozen contract on Solana, you're not gonna ever really change that code. In many ways, ore is more immutable than even Bitcoin. It's harder to change an immutable contract on Solana than it is to ship a commit to Bitcoin's core code. Now, he's freezing a staking contract, an ore security console with geographically isolated keys on physical separate devices that manage transactions. Once frozen, no admin key compromise can ever touch stake funds. He's proactively patching a flash loan vulnerability that hasn't even been exploited yet. adding a cooldown period after deposits so no one can swoop in before the yield distribution and steal rewards from long-term stakers. Almost nobody in DeFi does this. Most teams keep contracts upgradable because they're afraid of bugs. HardhatChad would rather give up the ability to ever change the code again than to leave a single staker exposed. He posted it publicly. The only way forward for DeFi is an immutable open source contract. Otherwise, all of this is pointless and we're worse than TradFi. 21,000 people saw that. The team is 3 people. HardhatChad, he does all the technical work. Trey Buckingham handles all the non-technical work. Starship manages the community. 3 people running a protocol that generates $24 million a year in revenue. And the code that makes it all work can never be changed by anyone, ever. For OR to win, Solana has to win. Every major payment company on earth is making the same bet right now. Visa, PayPal, MasterCard, Stripe, Western Union, and Cash App. They're not experimenting with blockchain anymore. They're building on it, and they're choosing the same chain. Not because of ideology, because of speed. Because when you need to move real money for a real business in real time, you go where the transactions settle in 1 second for a fraction of a penny. You go where the infrastructure already works. Solana just processed more stablecoin volume in a single month than any blockchain in history, more than Ethereum with a fraction of supply. Because stablecoins on Ethereum sit, on Solana they move. That's not a blockchain anymore. That's literally an economy. And then there's X. 500 million monthly users just got direct pipeline to Solana underneath their feed, and most of them have no idea that they're touching a blockchain. That's always been the end game. Not convincing people to use crypto, but making it invisible. The same way no one thinks about HTTP when they open up a website. One of OR's own team members works at Aon, one of the largest professional service firms on earth. His team executed the first ever stablecoin payment for insurance premiums on Solana. A traditional finance institution chose this chain, it's not a test, as a real transaction. And they had to fight through the treasury approvals to do it because nobody in traditional finance has done it before. The regulations are finally clearing. The legal path for stablecoin payments at scale exists for the first time ever, and the money's already moving. This is the chain OR is built on, not by accident, by design. So the highway is being built. The money's already moving. The institutions are already here, and there's something that's missing, and nobody's talking about it. What becomes the store value on that layer? It can't be Bitcoin. Too slow to use natively. You would have to bridge it, and we've already covered why this doesn't work. You end up trusting a custodian, which defeats the entire purpose of Bitcoin in the first place. It can't be Solana, because Solana is the gas token. It's what you burn to use the network. You don't store your wealth in gasoline. It has to be something native, something born on the chain, with a fixed supply that can't be inflated. Real yield backed by economic activity, a frozen contract that nobody can change, and something that inherits every upgrade Solana ships without building any infrastructure itself. While Bitcoin debates block sizes and Zcash tries to build its own ecosystem from scratch, OR plugs into the fastest financial infrastructure on earth and rides every improvement for free. Firedancer makes mining cheaper. Privacy features get inherited automatically. New DeFi protocols create more composability. A financial layer without a native store of value is a highway with nowhere to park, or is building that vault at the end of that highway. Now, let's talk about what's actually happening on the inside of the protocol right now, because numbers don't make sense until you see them all together. OR generates over $50,000 a day in protocol revenue, not token emissions, not VC subsidies, real SOL flowing through the mining system every single minute. Analyze, that's close to $20 million. The entire market cap right now is $23 million. In any market, traditional finance or crypto, There's a standard way to value something that generates revenue. You look at how much it earns and you multiply it by what the market thinks the growth is worth. Most revenue generating protocols on Solana trade at 5 to 10x what they earn per year. That's pretty normal. That's how the market prices things in that are actually working. Or is trading at roughly 1x its revenue. The market is pricing this protocol like it's about to stop working tomorrow. But 198,000 SOL in lifetime revenue says otherwise. Over 26,000 holders says otherwise. And the fact that this week the protocol went deflationary 2 separate days, burning more ore through buybacks than was minted, says otherwise. If the market today valued ore like it values every other revenue generating protocol on Solana, each token will be worth over $200 today. That's not a prediction, that's just the math, and the market hasn't even done that math yet. And while you wait for the market to figure this out, you're not just sitting idle. Staking pays anywhere between 15 to 18% APY depending on your mining activity, compounded daily. That's roughly 3.5 times the amount you would get by staking your Solana, and about 4 times you would get any traditional savings account. The miners holding unrefined ore have seen yields all the way up from 60% to over 150%. But here's what makes this different from anything else in crypto. When you stake your SOL, when you stake your ETH, the yield comes from the network printing more tokens. Your rewards are funded by dilution. You're earning more tokens while every token becomes worth slightly less. Ore's yield doesn't work that way. Every dollar of staking rewards comes from real economic activity, real SOL flowing through the mining system, real buybacks that are happening on the open market. You're not being paid in inflation. You're being paid from revenue. That distinction barely exists anywhere in crypto. And you don't have to lock anything up. No 30-day waiting period, no unstaking queue, no countdown timer that you have to sit through. You claim your rewards that day and you restake them that day. You compound every single day if you want to, or pull everything out in seconds on a frozen immutable contract where no admin keys could ever touch your funds. Real yield from real revenue with instant access on an immutable contract. Find that combination anywhere else. I'll wait. Now, let me show you why we call this the Ore cheat code. If Solana reaches its all-time high market cap and Ore captures just 1% of that, each token will be worth over $3,800. Not 10% of the ecosystem, not some fantasy market share, we're talking about 1% for the only fair launch, frozen mint, revenue generating proof of work token on the fastest chain in the world. At around $50 today, 26 Ore cost around $1,300, 26 tokens. That's the position. If Ore reaches 1% of what Solana was worth at its peak, that $1,300 becomes $100,000. But you have to understand the thesis. You're betting that the protocol generating $20 million a year in real revenue with a permanently frozen supply of 3 million with buybacks that compress the circulating supply every single day with an endorsement of the people who built Solana is worth 1 penny for every dollar of the ecosystem it lives on. The simple answer is yes. You got to consider what you're comparing it to. Over 99% of Bitcoin's transactions don't even run on Bitcoin's blockchain anymore. They run on Coinbase, Robinhood, Binance. Most people look at self-custody and look at the complexity and choose to hand over their keys to the exact institutions that Satoshi built Bitcoin to replace. That's not digital gold. That's paper Bitcoin. Ore doesn't have that problem. Every transaction, every mine, every buyback, every stake, all of it runs natively on Solana. No custodian, no IOU, no paper version of itself. The institutional infrastructure is already being assembled. Blockworks signed a partnership to feature Ore on their institutional dashboard. There's an OTC page live on Ore.supply. A treasury program is in development, and HardhatChad personally loaned ore and USDC to Humidify to create a trading pair. The Ore Foundation is being legally formed for outreach and education. These aren't just announcements on a roadmap. These are actually happening right now. Most of the world hasn't even heard of this yet. There's no Coinbase listing, there's no major exchange, there's no mainstream coverage. The institutional doors are being built right now, and by the time ore is easy to find, the price won't look like this anymore. 452,000 ore circulating out of 3 million max. A supply that goes deflationary multiple days a week because the buyback engine buries tokens faster than new ones can mint. The mine keeps producing, but the furnace next to it keeps melting down most of what comes out. The amount that actually makes it to circulation stays tight, and the more people that use it, the scarcer it gets. Everything you've seen so far has happened with a small team, a dedicated community, no foundation, no major exchange listings, no marketing budget. Now imagine what comes next. Miss Queen Thep, who now leads the marketing protocol, she pitched on at least one ore to communities like Venezuela, Indonesia, Nigeria, Turkey, Argentina, places where one token isn't a trade, it's a chance. She told her team across 9 different countries to buy ore at $10. In some of those countries, what that token became was life-changing money. And built into every round is something called the Motherlode, a jackpot pool that goes by 0.2 ore every single round with only a 0.16 chance of actually dropping. Every round it doesn't hit, the pool gets bigger. Now imagine this protocol at scale, $1 billion market cap, thousands mining every minute, the pool stacking round after round, and when they finally drop, someone on their phone during their lunch break watches $1 million jackpot hit their wallet. No warehouse, no mining ring, just a person who showed up that day. The original promise of crypto, the one Bitcoin made and the warehouses took away, or is the only protocol still keeping that promise. Bitcoin proved that money doesn't need a government. Solana proved that money can move faster than any bank. Or is proving something else, that a store of value needs more than technology. It needs people who would rather go to zero than to walk away from what they believe in. People who showed up at $600 that are still here at $50. People who mined through the crash, who mined through the silence, through every reason to quit. Every single token was earned. Nothing was given. This isn't the store of value of Solana. This is Solana's culture coin. And the story is just getting started. The hard hat stays on, my friends. Always.